Hey, today I'll be talking about Book 3 of Legend of Zhenhuan. As harem politics become more complicated, you're going to notice more name changes here and there. Some book concubines were either combined into one or split into two in the drama, and I swear this isn't just me being lazy, but it truly doesn't matter. I'll point out the changes where they're relevant, but trying to go into detail about each and every character and their drama counterpart just makes things too complicated to follow. If you have a specific question though, feel free to ask. Okay, let's get started. Zhenhuan visits Duan and finds out about her living situation and Hua's hand in it. Since her miscarriage, she and the emperor have fallen out completely. Zhenhuan overhears this conversation between LingRong and the emperor. She's hurt and gets very ill as her palace turns into a cold palace. She gets all the same visits from people trying to cheer her up, including Shen Qing. Meizhuang takes her to the cold palace where they find Li, face caked in flour she's been using as makeup. Li actually sees her and starts crying and begging Zhenhuan to help her, which is what makes her run out in fear. Interestingly, Meizhuang admits that she comes here every now and again to see how low her enemies have fallen, and prays to see Hua here one day as well. She's much more bitter in the books. Zhenhuan runs into Lu Zhaoyi and Qin Fangyi, not Qi and Fu Cha as in the drama. These two are book characters, cousins, and ultimately irrelevant, hence the lack of faces. Qin goads Lu into punishing her to kneel. Lu Zhaoyi turned to leave and Qin Fangyi followed her for a few steps before turning around and saying, "Noble concubine, since you are no longer pregnant, kneeling for a while can do you no harm." Her words were like thorns piercing my heart, and I suddenly recalled the unspeakable pain that day in Mishio Palace. My expression froze. Qin Fangyi smiled charmingly as she spoke, and then did something that shocked and incensed me. She gently opened her cherry red lips and spat a mouthful of saliva onto my face. Such humiliation. I reacted instantly, closing my eyes and turning, but I was not quick enough to avoid the insult. The spit fell onto my ear. She smiled, happy, proud, and said with a laugh, "Don't be angry, noble concubine. I'm only following Mistress Zhaoyi's instructions to teach you a lesson. Please kindly accept this bit of saliva." Zhenhuan is of course trembling with rage and frustration, but she won't even wipe the spit off her face, kneeling as the servants watch and whisper about her, letting the disgusting glob dry in the cold wind and numb that part of her face. When time is up, she goes home and asks her servants to prepare some butterflies. She does the whole butterfly thing and makes eye contact with Shen Qing, who she can tell understands why she has to do this. Then right back onto the scheming horse. Hua weasels her way back into the emperor's good graces. After causing Zhenhuan to miscarry, Hua lost her honorary title and is now called by her name. She's Consort Mu-rong. It's shameful, but really barely even counts as a demotion, which is why Zhenhuan was so hurt and angry. She's back and better than ever though. Zhenhuan does that whole scary story thing with Qin, who is scared completely senseless. Lu Zhaoyi resigns from her post and asks for a demotion, claiming she isn't capable of handling the responsibility, but it's just to lay low so Zhenhuan doesn't go after her. We will not see them again. I'm also going to go ahead and remove Li from the list. She never loses her title, but she also never leaves the cold palace again. So the only highly ranked consorts are Duan, Jing, and Hua, though Jing is the only one who ever actually leaves her palace. The empress presides over the affairs of the harem. Consort Mu-rong never leaves the house unless it's to attend important festival banquets, and I try my best to play the role of the beloved concubine, sharing Xuanling's love and ensuring it reigns evenly across the harem. Outside of the palace, Hua's family is making life for her father and brother difficult since they have so much power in the military. Her brother's wife, Xue Qiantao, gets pregnant, but when she comes to visit, she's a bit unhappy. She says Zhenheng doesn't really seem happy with her, and she's a bit nervous that he will want to take some concubines. Zhenhuan gives her some encouragement and asks her for a favor, but we don't get to hear what it is. The Nian family and its co-conspirators continue to get more and more arrogant, and Zhenhuan advises the emperor to give Mu-rong back her position and name so they can really dig their own graves. Showing some real trust in her, the emperor tells Zhenhuan the truth of the musk incense in Hua's palace and says he feels some guilt about maybe indirectly causing her to miscarry. "Every time I see you crying, missing your child and resenting Consort Hua, I feel all the more uneasy. You blame her, but it feels as if you are blaming me. I am the one who harmed our child." I could bear it no longer. It felt like my heart was being scratched and torn at with sharp claws, causing pang after pang of sharp shooting pain. Tears fell down my cheeks and I held tightly to the hem of his clothes, crying so hard I couldn't speak. He even tells her about how Duan was framed by him and the empress and had never really sent that bowl of medicine to Hua that caused her to miscarry. We get these same revelations in the drama. It's the fact that he's telling her that's surprising. His honesty makes Zhenhuan truly forgive him. After all, she thinks, her hands aren't clean either. She decides holding on to this resentment is only hurting herself and she has to let it go. Then we get some big news. Zhenhuan's brother has fallen in love with a courtesan named Jia Yi while his wife is 3 months pregnant. He insists on marrying her even despite everyone's objections. Zhenhuan is called in to discuss this with the empress. The empress shook her head repeatedly and said, "It's simply too much to bear. For the sake of such a woman, he throws away the relationship between husband and wife and the upbringing of his parents? What is the meaning of this?" I was so angry that I almost burst into tears in front of the empress. I gritted my teeth and said, "My brother is so completely under this seductress's spell that he won't even come home. I've ordered someone to go back and tell my parents that such a woman must not be allowed to marry into the Zhen family and bring disgrace to our name." Mei Zhong finds out about Zhenhuan getting Hua reinstated and is shocked and betrayed. This part is pretty much the same. Mei Zhong is quite cold and accuses her of colluding with Hua. Zhenhuan is shocked. This whole really well-written conversation is almost exactly word for word, and I can see why. Wow, I had forgotten how heart-wrenching it is. Zhenhuan promises that one day she will understand why she did this, yada yada. The only change here is, after saying this, she leaves in the drama, but in the novel, she stops at the door as she has something to add. It was presumptuous, but other than me, no one would dare say it, so I turned around and said, "Sister, please forgive me for speaking carelessly, but in this palace, there are some feelings that shouldn't be had. For example, feelings for another man." When Mei Zhong heard this, her eyelids twitched as if they had been singed by flames, and she looked at me intently. She laughed without sound. "I'm not a fool, nor am I confused. Please save these words for your Dr. Wen. You're wasting them on me." Zhenhuan tells her that she will return when she has succeeded, and with that, she leaves. Another month or so passes, and one day, while Zhenhuan has company, someone comes running into her palace. Immediately, I shouted, "Who dares be so rude? Why weren't they barred outside? Don't you know Her Highness the Empress is here?" The person ran up to me, raised their head, and I saw that it was my sister-in-law, Xue Qiantao. She cried out sadly, "Noble concubine," and threw her whole body to the ground. Everyone is shocked at her lack of decorum, and Xue's hair and clothes are a mess as she bawls like a child. Zhenhuan's words, not mine. She cries that Zhenheng wants to divorce her for Jia Yi, the courtesan he fell in love with. She's here to beg Zhenhuan to intercede. She can barely talk, so her maid explains what happened. When he learned that the girl was 1 month pregnant, the young master insisted she had to be accepted. That girl entered the house as a concubine. Although the young madam was very angry, she wanted to see her to give her some supplements because she was pregnant with the young master's child. Who knew she would be so arrogant and disrespectful to the young madam? The young madam pushed her in a fit of anger. At that time, the girl was not bothered and even laughed at the young madam. But this morning, there was a big commotion. Everyone was saying that the girl had had a miscarriage after being pushed. The young master was furious and immediately issued a divorce note to the young madam. My sister-in-law burst into tears, and when she raised her hand to wipe them away, her sleeve came loose, revealing several purple and blue bruises on her arm. I rolled up my sister-in-law's sleeves and pulled her hand to my face, saying, "How did this happen?" Seeing that she couldn't hide it anymore, my sister-in-law sobbed and said, "Because I refused, he raised his hands at me." Everyone is shocked and disgusted, and to add even more craziness to this circus, her brother shows up. My sister-in-law shrank reflexively and begged, "Look, Your Highness, he's even chased me into the palace. I'm afraid he'll certainly divorce me." When I heard my brother was coming, I couldn't help but raise my eyebrows and say, "Has this fool let himself become this muddle-headed? Is the palace a place where he can run wild like this?" "Sister-in-law, don't panic. He has come just at the right time. Watch how I will teach him understanding." I said to the Empress, "Your Highness is the master of the harem. Now that the matter has come to this, it's no longer my own family affair. I beg Your Highness to spare some pity and see justice done for me and my sister-in-law." So the other consorts leave, leaving the Empress, Zhenhuan, Xue, and Zhenheng alone. When Zhenheng comes in, Xue tries to greet him, but he ignores her completely, only greeting Zhenhuan and the Empress. Seeing this, the Empress frowned, but in the moment did not show her anger, only telling my brother to sit down. I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. My sister-in-law has my brother's flesh and blood in her stomach. Is this how my brother treats her in front of others? Then one can imagine the conditions when you're alone. When my brother heard these words, his color changed in an instant and he said, "Your Highness, you are my own blood sister. How can you take the side of an outsider? You say Xue's stomach contains my flesh and blood, but was the life that died in Jia Yi's stomach not also my flesh and blood?" Zhenhuan doesn't believe that Xue would ever do that on purpose, but Zhenheng doesn't want to hear it. He coldly takes out the divorce note, throws it at Xue's feet, and tells her that he never wants to see her venomous face again. Xue tries to do a head smash suicide, but a eunuch spots it and stops her. Zhenheng just finds her more disgusting for trying to get out of it by killing herself, insulting her some more, and insisting he will not live with her. Zhenhuan is angry, embarrassed, and yelling at him, and at this moment, LingRong comes through the door. Quickly getting a grasp on the situation, she says some comforting words to Xue, asking that she calm herself down for the sake of the baby, not saying anything to Zhenheng, though she does look at him. My brother's eyes were slightly averted. He avoided looking at her, only saying, "Greetings, Mistress Xiaoyuan." When my sister-in-law saw LingRong, she was slightly startled. The maid beside her made a noise and said curiously, "This mistress really resembles that girl Jia Yi." As soon as the words left her mouth, LingRong stood stunned. Ah, shit. LingRong recomposes herself, goes to Xue, and takes her to another room to calm down. On her way out, she tells Zhenheng that he shouldn't be swayed by this new flame and should stay true to his old love. After LingRong and Xue leave, Zhenhun insists that Jia Yi is a kind-hearted person and Xue must be the one lying. He even rails at Zhenhuan, saying she shouldn't have so randomly chosen Xue as his wife, even though they knew nothing of her true personality, so this is partly her fault. Zhenhuan is shocked and crying that her brother has become like this. Xue has recomposed herself and comes back into the room, calmly and coldly saying that since they married, she's done everything she can to be the perfect wife, that she's fulfilled every duty of a virtuous woman, and if he insists on being like this, then he does not need to divorce her, she is done with him. Zhenhuan comes to her side and says she can be without a disloyal brother, but she can't be without such a worthy sister. She tells Zhenhun to leave, saying their relationship as siblings is over. Witnessing such a scene, everyone was so shocked that they dared not speak. The Empress said, "Young Master Zhen is confused, but are you also going to let anger so cloud your judgments? How can you say such a thing? You are family. You cannot mean to cut ties merely over this girl?" My brother was silent for a moment, his eyes filled with cold indifference. He straightened his sleeves, gave a steady bow, and said, "It doesn't matter if everyone else cuts ties with me. I only want Jia Yi. I take my leave." Saying that, he strode out of Tangli Palace without a glance back. Everyone is absolutely shocked, only LingRong has a poker face. The stress of the incident makes Zhenhuan very sick, and LingRong brings some food to visit her. Xue has gone back to her parents' home, while Zhenhun is no longer welcome at his. Zhenhuan finds out about LingRong using her own blood as medicine and asks why she would go this far. LingRong admits that she sees her not only as a close friend, but as the sister of the man she's always had in her heart. I was extremely shocked and my heart was beating loudly. These many days of secret speculation and worry, careful reminders and deterrence, and she'd so suddenly simply said it. It was so unbelievable I felt as if I were dreaming. I hurriedly covered her mouth, looked around and said, "Do you no longer want your life? How can you say such a thing so casually?" LingRong says she thought she could hold it in forever, but seeing how his marriage has turned out, she has so many regrets. Zhenhuan thinks she's really being sincere, though she can't help but still be a bit wary. Still, after that day's heart-to-heart, they do grow close again. A few times, Zhenhuan finds LingRong crying about how badly Zhenhun is ruining his life. He's living in a love shack with this Jia Yi and has become a laughingstock. No one in the military respects him anymore, and the Zhen family has cut all ties. Zhenhuan has hardened herself, but LingRong is constantly worried about him. As the emperor prepares his attack on Yang Gengyao's camp, Zhenhuan gets herself in trouble on purpose at the banquet and gets kicked out of the palace for her protection. LingRong says she will go with her. I'm assuming the drama changes were approved by the author, so I guess we can assume LingRong is already working for the Empress at this point, so this was not in the least bit sincere. They are there for months, the Emperor is successful, and in that time, Xue gives birth to a son. The Emperor and Zhenhuan discuss this together when they are reunited. He chuckled. "Now that the matter is resolved, your brother and sister-in-law can be reunited. Your brother's reputation has been ruined to the point where he can't even see his newly born son." I smiled and said, "For my country and emperor, these grievances are nothing." Be honest, did you see this coming? I tried to take you through the same journey I went through here as we find out at this moment that yes, it was all a trick. So, pretty much identical to what Zhenhuan did at the banquet, her brother made a show of getting himself in trouble so everyone would write him off, and then he was able to sneak about gathering names of co-conspirators and lead the final attack. This must have been the favor Zhenhuan asked Qiantao for, and Qiantao, her brother, Jia Yi, and the emperor were all in on it. Is this a fun and exciting reveal? Yes. But, ma'am, this isn't how first person works. Why was she so affected knowing damn well none of it was for real? Why was she thinking sad thoughts for her sister-in-law or angry thoughts about her brother? You literally used words like "I couldn't help but" as if Zhenhuan was not in control of her emotions when she obviously was, since all of this was an act. I know you wanted your big reveal, but there are some sacrifices you have to make when you write a book in first person, and this is one of them. Things can happen to trick your protagonist, but she can't trick herself in her own thoughts.
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived.
Back to the story. Meizhuang and Zhenhuan make up. Cao confesses to Hua's misdeeds and gets herself out of it by crying the poor mother. Zhenhuan is impressed and scared with her performance. Hua is properly demoted and imprisoned. Her maid is actually not punished, she just has her green tag removed and is to live out the rest of her days in a far-off palace. Zhenhun did a great job quelling this rebellion and gets a bunch of big promotions, as does her father and even her sister-in-law. The couple comes to greet Zhenhuan with their bouncing baby boy, who Zhenhuan names Zhining. They report that Zhenhuan's little sister Yu Yao is engaged. Interestingly, the man she's engaged to, Guanxi, is Qi Guiren's brother. She actually hasn't entered the palace yet, but it's already been announced. The Guan family also played a big part in squashing the rebellion, and so it makes sense to join their families. Zhenhuan has no objections. Now that we know the whole Jia Yi thing was all an act, we find out that these two are actually very much in love with each other. As for Jia Yi, she was just a pawn in this little play, but she does get compensated for her time. In Chinese, there's this word 赎身, literally redeem a body. So paying an amount of money to deregister yourself as a prostitute and make yourself a regular citizen of good standing. So Zhenhuan does that for her and also buys her a house and promises to pay for her dowry in the future if she finds someone she wants to marry. And with that, all the loose ends are tied up and Zhenhuan no longer has to pretend to hate his wife. Zhenhuan sees them off and then sees a lonely-looking figure standing in the snow holding an umbrella. It's LingRong, feeling like a fool as she watches the happy couple walk away. Zhenhuan rushes over to her. I held her hand tightly and said, "It's cold outside. If you have something to say, let's speak inside." LingRong only shook her head, and I hurriedly said to the people behind me, "Go inside. Imperial concubine An and I will enjoy the snow for a while." Seeing that everyone had gone, LingRong only stared at the snow, lost in thought, smiling for a long time. Sister, you made such an effort to hide this from me, making me worry about the young master for nothing. Zhenhuan says she didn't mean to hide it, but the emperor told her not to tell anyone. LingRong just sadly says, of course, and after all, it makes no difference whether an unimportant person like her knows or not. Zhenhuan tries to apologize, but LingRong says it's getting late and heads back to her palace. Whatever the reason, Zhenhuan did watch her as she cried and fretted these past few months, knowing that it was all an act, and she didn't trust her enough to tell her the truth. I also think part of the hurt here is it gave her false hope. We don't know how far the relationship went, but it seems clear that the affection was mutual at some point. LingRong finding out that Jia Yi looked like her must have felt like he still had her in his heart, only to be doused in cold water with the realization that he got over her a long time ago and is now happy with his wife and son while she was still living in delusion. Zhenhuan watches her walk off. Her figure gradually disappeared into the heavy snow, leaving only a line of footprints on the ground. The rustling snowflakes whirled like banished immortals sent down to earth, and their sparkling crystal-clear segments glistened like tears in a giant eye. In a short time, LingRong's footprints were covered. Everything the same as it was before. It was as if she had never stepped there, as if she had never loved before. Back to harem politics. After watching Cao masterfully bring Hua down without implicating herself, Zhenhuan grows weary of how clever and calculating Cao can be. She begins giving her bad advice that ends up making her look more scheming to the emperor and the empress, contrary to the careful image she's maintained all these years. We get some new girls, including Qiguiren, just as she is in the drama. The new girls mostly come from families who played a role in bringing down the Nian family, so some of them dislike Hua and badmouth her quite openly. But the emperor doesn't really seem to care and just brushes it off. Thinking that the emperor has truly stopped caring about Hua, Cao suggests killing off her close servants. Bad advice from Zhenhuan. The new girls are young, and of course the emperor won't care about their silly remarks, but for the more mature Cao to say this just looks bad. Duan knows what's up, and in one of their conversations laughs that Cao has become quite bad at scheming, and it must be thanks to Zhenhuan's work behind the scenes. In fact, there are a lot more Duan and Zhenhuan conversations in the novel. Duan sees everything that happens since no one takes her as a threat, and is like Zhenhuan's fairy godmother and confidant. She's also getting healthier thanks to Dr. Wen. Then we have Hua's servants thinking about Zhenhuan's palace, Zhenhuan starting the fire, and Meizhuang burning herself. Cao becomes quite ill, though no one can figure out what's up. Hua is to be put to death, and Zhenhuan goes to see her. No big reveals here. Hua tells her about meeting the emperor when she was 17, how she was the only girl in the harem not afraid of him, she loved him so deeply. Then she got pregnant and lost her child thanks to Duan, not really, but she doesn't know. Zhenhuan tells her about the incense, head smash, New Year. Duan continues to get healthier as Cao continues to get sicker. This age decrease kills me sometimes because Duan is 27 and is constantly sighing like, even if my health gets better, I am at the end of my life. I am a withered old woman who has lived through so much. Who knows if I will make it till tomorrow? Like, calm down, you are 27. As she's doing all that sad sighing with Zhenhuan one day, a servant comes to give the news that Cao has died. Zhenhuan sends the servant out to make arrangements. When consort Duan saw she was gone, she looked at me and said, "Are you sure there were no mistakes in your arrangements?" Calmly, I said, "Yes. I started putting in the medicine 6 months ago, and according to calculations, today should have been the day they took effect. Dr. Wen was very careful about the dosage, so there would be no mistakes." Ho ho, interesting. The medicine gave her nightmares for months before she died, and everyone thinks Cao died out of fear and guilt for betraying Hua. And with that, Duan gets herself a daughter. Things settle and the emperor is pretty much fine with everyone in the harem. Qiguiren has become quite well liked, but not overly so. Here's a fun line. In private, Jinshi once asked me if I wanted to recruit 1 or 2 for my own use. I smiled and said, "Let them fight amongst themselves. When only the strong ones are left, I will choose the ones who can be of use to me." The emperor decides to promote Zhenhuan to Zhao Yi and LingRong to Fan Yi. The day of the promotion, Zhenhuan's dress is messed up, so she gets a replacement. Exact same scene with the emperor seeing her through the curtains. He runs to her, grabbing her in a hug and saying, He's holding her so tightly that she can't move, so she spits out,
臣妾甄嬛参见皇上。
which is when he comes back to Earth. He's furious and the Empress comes in and pretends at shock. He yells at her to take off the clothes. Zhenhuan tells the truth that her dress was messed up, but the Emperor sends her away, canceling the ceremony. Zhenhuan knows this was a trick, but is of course still hurt finding out she's been a replacement all these years. Her palace becomes deserted, she becomes weaker and weaker until Liu Zhu kills herself to get a doctor in who finds out she's pregnant. The Emperor still doesn't see her after finding out she's pregnant, and no one is allowed to enter her palace. Mei Zhuang and Duan send messages when they can, but no word from LingRong. Dr. Wen tells her he found musk in the cream LingRong gave her, and Zhenhuan realizes she never really was a true friend. Although, she needs to be more honest with herself, as from the very moment they met, she's never really treated LingRong with sincerity. She never tried to hurt her, though. With that, a few more months pass, and she is 6 months pregnant. We get the scene of the new girls being disrespectful, well, really just Qi. Huanbi wonders why Qi is being so disrespectful when her brother is marrying Zhenhuan's sister. Zhenhuan assumes it's just not wanting to be tainted by her now ruined reputation in the harem, or maybe her brother has decided not to marry Yu Yao. She doesn't know because she can't get in contact with her family. We get to 8 months into the pregnancy, which is when her family should be allowed to visit her, but nope. Zhenhuan gets the truth out of Dr. Wen. Her father and brother have been convicted of collusion, and the person who reported her family was none other than Guanxi, Xi's brother who was supposed to be marrying Zhenhuan's sister. The Zhen family has been completely destroyed, even baby Zhenning has been imprisoned with his mother. Her father and brother were exiled to separate, faraway places. The reason for the swift judgment is that they had a very believable witness. Jia Yi. As far as the public knows, the whole Zhenheng saga was the truth, so his public reputation has never recovered. This is the sacrifice Zhenhuan was talking about earlier when she was discussing it with the Emperor. People believe that her brother is a bad guy, and since, as far as they know, he was so in love with Jia Yi, they believe she would have been privy to inside information. Guanxi also seems like he's telling the truth because why would he torpedo the family he was just about to get in bed with unless it was the absolute truth? Zhenhuan's head is spinning as she wonders who turned Jia Yi and what motivation Qi's family had to do this. She goes to see the Emperor. They meet and she tries tactfully to tell him to look at all sides before he makes any kind of final decision. He helped me to a seat and said calmly, "You're using all of these tactics to beg for my help, but you haven't asked how I'm doing. Is that all you have to say?" How he was doing? I raised my eyes indifferently. I hadn't seen him since I'd been imprisoned. I was here meeting with him so suddenly today because my family's life was held in his hands alone. In this kind of awkward and difficult situation, how in the world could I care to ask how he was doing? I was so glad to read this because this is exactly what I thought she would be thinking in this scene.
也不问朕好不好。
Conversation shakes out the same, except she's also begging for her brother, sister-in-law, and nephew's life. The Emperor admits that her sister-in-law and nephew were bitten by rats in prison and became very sick. He did allow them to be released, but it might be too late. He stays firm on the rest though. Her brother and father must go. It seems he's gone totally paranoid after Nian Gengyao, and despite all her family has done for him, he believes the reports. She says he's being crazy, he tosses the papers, she sees the poem he's writing to his dear dead wife. Zhenhuan is done with it all, and at this moment, LingRong enters. Crying, she says that doctors have confirmed Xue and her son cannot be saved. As LingRong spoke, she came over and took my arm, saying with great concern, "Sister, you're pregnant. Please don't be too sad." I knew it couldn't be so simple. Through the haze of my tears, her beautiful face seemed twisted, horrible and frightening. She took the opportunity to lean closer to me and quietly whispered into my ear with a smile, "And the dead can never be brought back to life." I was so filled with hate that I almost spit up blood. Just as I moved to push her away, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach as if it were about to split open. Zhenhuan goes into labor and delivers a princess. The Emperor comes in looking to reconcile, but she's not interested. She gives her daughter to Jing, her titles are revoked, and Huanbi and Jinxi decide to accompany her to the temple. Zhenhuan leaves just as another concubine selection is happening and is seen off by Mei Zhuang and Dr. Wen. She gets into the carriage and says goodbye to palace life. Behind me, Mei Zhuang and Wen Shichu were still standing in the rain, watching me leave. This was the last tender image left to me after 4 years in the harem. We exited the palace gates and with it left those familiar red walls behind. I was finally leaving the harem, that ever-bustling demon. With a soft, sad smile, I lowered the carriage curtain. So ends book 3. Till next time, thanks for watching.